Howdy howdy, Frenox here bringing you a tips and tricks new player guide for Galahad 3093. Quick disclaimer, I am making this at the very end of the final beta, so things may change over time. Also, the tips and tricks are in the context of the way that I like to play, so your mileage may vary. Additionally, this video is meant to supplement the tutorial, not replace it, so if you're a new player, I definitely recommend going through that tutorial. It's got a lot of useful information in there. With that out of the way, let's get to it. Galahad is ultimately a mech game with a lot of customization, so the first thing you're going to need to do is put together a build. With that in mind, let's head to the armory. Every mech, or lance as they're called in this game, is made up of a weight class, a variant, equipment loadout, mods, and a knight. First, you gotta pick a weight class. Lights are small, fast, and fragile, and do standard damage. Mediums have balanced stats, and also do standard damage. Heavies are slower than mediums, but more durable, again, standard damage. And then finally, super heavies are the slowest of the bunch, only have the durability of about a medium, but get to do about 1.5 times the damage of everyone else. They're kind of like a glass cannon, but not really made of glass, just kind of a slow cannon. In any case, I recommend starting with either the heavy or the medium, as they're just a little bit more versatile and I think they're just an easier place to start with. Each weight class includes a selection of variants which all have slightly different stats and capacity for mods. Some variants even have special built-in intrinsic mods, giving them handy or unique baked-in characteristics. Take this Moonlight Mark III I have selected. It enjoys a 10% capture speed bonus and a 5% energy damage dealt bonus built right in. Very nice. You'll only start with a few variants available to you at first, but you can quickly unlock more as you progress. Generally speaking, the early variants have the best base stats, although they only have very limited customization options. Later unlocks base stats aren't quite as good, but the vastly increased space for mods, combined with any cool intrinsic mods you have, more than makes up for it. I highly recommend looking through all the variants, seeing which ones catch your eye, and taking note of what needs to be done to unlock them. Unlocking a wider and wider selection of variants to play with is a big part of the progress of this game. Next up is to select your equipment. Every lance has 2 primary weapons, which are typically your main damage dealers, 2 secondary weapons that typically serve in an either situational or supplementary role, and a deployable. I recommend familiarizing yourself with all of the options here. There aren't a ton of choices in each category, and being aware of what weapons and deployables are available will pay back in spades when trying to design your builds. After equipment, there's mods. Now these things are fantastic, and where a huge amount of your customization is going to come into play. Mods can do anything from improving the firing characteristics of your weapon, enhancing the durability of your lance, or even adding new features entirely, like scrambling nearby enemy turrets, or giving your lance the ability to dodge and hover. There are loads of options here, but thankfully they're organized into a few categories. The categories are fairly self-explanatory, so I won't bore you there. Universal's the only odd one, having the ability to support mods from any of the other categories. Very, very handy. Mods are also arranged in families of 5 tiers, with each tier being a directly upgraded version of the one before it. Believe me, you are always going to be wishing you had more mod slots and slots that can support higher tiers. You're also probably going to spend a fair amount of time looking through these things, thinking of all the cool combinations you'd like to try in a new build. There are a few especially important mods that I'll go over later, but for the most part it just comes down to picking whatever mods you think will fit on the lance, support whatever gameplay you're looking for, and just be fun to use. Unlocking more and higher tier mods is another major source of progression in this game. The last part of the build is the knight. Once again, there are only a handful of choices here, so it's a good idea to get familiar with all of them. Each knight gives the lance both a passive ability and an active one. Knight abilities are both varied and powerful, so choosing the right knight can make a really big difference when it comes to putting together a successful build. Choose carefully here. Okay, now I know I said the knight was the final part of the build, but that's not entirely true. The true final and arguably most important part of any build is, of course, the paint. An array of visual customization options are available over here, and a fun part of making any build feel truly yours. This might seem a little overwhelming at first, but don't worry, there's something you can do while you're still figuring everything out. If you just want to hop into something and get going, you can click the Select Roll button up here and choose a pre-made lance. These will allow you to pick from a handful of pre-made lances decently well suited for the listed gameplay style, pretty useful for just trying a few things out and seeing what sort of gameplay suits you best. If you are ready to start designing your own builds, here are a few tips to help get you started. Start out either with akimbo primary weapons, or 2 different weapons that share the same aiming requirements. For instance, taking 2 different machine gun-like weapons, like the Brimstone and Banshee, allows you to hit with both weapons at the same time without needing to adjust your aim. If you instead paired something like a rocket launcher with a laser beam, you'd put yourself in this awkward position of needing to aim directly at the target to hit with a laser, but needing to lead ahead to hit with the rockets. Weird combos like that can work, but they're a lot harder to use, so I wouldn't recommend starting out like that. Think about how your lance is going to repair. All lances can heal allied lances and structures by just standing right next to them, looking at them, and waiting for the repair beam to kick in, but it's not always easy to find a teammate willing to stop and heal you. There are a few other ways to get repairs, and it's good to have at least one of these available to you in your build. There are repair pads scattered across the maps that will fix your lance, but only if your team owns the nearby capture point. Tier 4 and higher of the double agent mod allows you to utilize any repair pad, regardless of who owns it. Another option is the mod Nano Repair, which allows your lance to slowly regenerate its own armor as long as your shields are at full capacity. It's not super fast, but can work well at keeping your health topped up. It's entirely passive, so that can be pretty nice. The last option is the deployable Corvus. Corvus is a repair drone that you can release on a cooldown that will heal you and any nearby allied structures and lances. This thing is a favorite of mine and is quite effective at repairing. It can even repair you in the middle of a fight, but it's somewhat fragile and struggles to keep up with you if you move around too much. Still though, very useful deployable. On a similar note, think about how you're going to deal with other people repairing. As I said before, the Corvus can heal you during a fight. Other methods can do this too and can totally turn the tables. It's important to have some way to deal with enemy Corvus drones or healing in general. The most thorough way to do this is to use the Knight K. His passive prevents any lance you damage from being able to heal in any way for several seconds. K is the ultimate no to any form of combat repair, and is an absolutely brutal asset when chasing someone down. If your build utilizes some other knight, then it's a good idea to set one of your secondary weapons to the Parados equipped with the Modified Targeting mod. This allows your secondary weapon to automatically shoot down enemy drones, which makes getting rid of the Corvus a snap. A third option is to just use an explosive weapon. The explosive damage type does bonus damage to deployables and structures, and the AoE of the weapon can often hit an enemy's drone even if your attack hits the enemy itself. It's not the most reliable of the solutions, but it's a good option if you're already looking to run explosive weapons anyways. There are two specific mods I'd like to point out that are extremely important for getting around. The first one is one I've actually already mentioned, and that's the Double Agent mod. Scattered around the map are turbo pads that can instantly refill both your skim fuel, which powers something like a sprint mode, and your jump jet fuel, which powers a longer cooldown, super powerful leap ability. There are also teleporter pads, which instantly teleport you to a paired location somewhere else on the map. These are both highly impactful for your mobility, and both act like those aforementioned repair pads. They only work if your team owns the nearby base. Tier 3 and above of the Double Agent mod allows you to use these crucial facilities no matter who owns the nearby base, and is an absolute must-have on any build. Seriously, prioritize unlocking Tier 3 Double Agent and a variant that can support it ASAP. You'll thank me later. The second one is Neodymium Servos. This mod gives you extra walk speed, which is nice, but the big thing here is the plus 50% jump height. This is huge. This makes your jump height high enough to clear a difference in elevation that's super common across all of the maps. It opens up a ton of different routes and movement options. You go from being able to jump this high to being able to jump this high. This height comes up all over the place. You get the full plus 50% jump height bonus on all tiers too, so even just tier 1 of this mod gets you the most important part. If you absolutely can't fit this mod into a build, then I highly recommend using the Knight Nim. Her passive gives you access to a double jump, and with the right timing, this can get you the same crucial total jump height. Not being able to jump this high in one way or another will make getting to many places a lot slower, and you'll quickly learn to hate getting around without it. Definitely a must-have. Alright, now let's talk movement. Movement is a huge component in this game, and is a skill you'll develop over time. There are a few key things to keep in mind though to improve your movement considerably. The first is that most of the time, it's a good idea to keep moving. A static target is an easy target, so unless you really need to be holding still for some reason, stay on the move. The next is that skim mode is a great way to increase your speed, but you only have so much fuel. It does come back over time, but it's important to make sure you're using it efficiently so you don't run out. Here's a few tips to help keep your gas tank from hitting empty. When traveling longer distances, hop once you're up to speed, and let go of the skim key. You'll lose some speed while you're coasting through the air, but you won't be burning fuel. Skim when you land to get your speed back up, and then hop again. Traveling long distances this way is a little bit slower than just skimming along the ground, but uses considerably less fuel. When fighting or maneuvering around, make sure you aren't just holding down the skim key unnecessarily. If you're holding still or even just slowing down to take a corner, let go of the skim key until you're ready to move fast again. It sounds obvious, but it's surprisingly easy to waste a lot of fuel this way without realizing it. Always be on the lookout for turbo pads. Since they instantly refill both your skim fuel and your jump jet fuel, they're extremely useful. Make sure your escape or even just your plain movement routes include turbo pads whenever possible, as they'll make a big difference in your travel times. Lastly, try not to run your tank down when you're just getting around. It's tempting to just move at full blast all the time, but you don't want to run out of fuel just as you're getting to the fight and have nothing left to actually use in it. Take short breaks when skimming anytime your fuel gets below 75% or so, and let it fill back up. Remember, you never know when you might need to chase, fight, or run, and you want to make sure you've got plenty of fuel available should the need arise. The next big thing to keep in mind is that you can use your skim jets in the air to affect your trajectory. Shift plus WASDA will push you around as long as you've got skim fuel. Mastering the use of this makes a very big difference. It can literally mean the difference between life and death in a lot of cases, and opens up some otherwise impossible looking movement options. Yet another reason to make sure you don't run out of skim fuel. Jump jets are hugely powerful and often feel equally out of control. A powerful thing to know though is that your jump jets inherit your movement at the time of jumping. Want to jump more vertically? Hold still or even move backwards before you jump. Want to maximize your distance? Move forwards at max speed and hit your regular jump just before you activate the jump jets. You can use your air control to modify your jump if you don't get it quite right, but mastering control over your jump jets is very powerful. It can make or break a chase and allow you to traverse the map with speed and grace. Because your jump jet is such a potent tool, it's a good idea to avoid using it whenever possible. If you engage a fight via your jump jets when you could have just reached it using regular movement, you've given up the most powerful escape you have before the fight's even started. If you have your jump jets ready and the other guy doesn't, it puts you at a massive advantage in any sort of chase scenario. Obviously use the jump jets when you have to, just always keep asking yourself if you can accomplish the same goal quickly enough using regular movement. The last thing I'd like to discuss are just a few general strategy tips. Each generator counts as -1 lances standing on the capture point. This means if you have multiple allies around, or if your build allows you to act as more than one lance on a capture point, you don't always need to actually kill all 4 generators to capture the base. With enough people, you can just all pile onto the point and capture it with all 4 generators still alive. Coordination is of course key here, so make sure you're communicating with your team what you're trying to do. Just damaging enemies does not affect the team's score. Only actually killing a lance will cause them to lose a ticket beyond the passive impact of owning bases. Because of this, it's important to secure kills. If you see somebody low, don't let them escape and heal back up. Unless it's impossible or too dangerous to do so, make sure they actually die. Likewise, your team only loses tickets, again outside of the passive effects of controlling bases, if you or one of your allies actually dies. If you're getting really low and it looks like you're probably going to die, try to escape. If you solo encounter an opponent you think will likely beat you in a duel, then run away. Don't start a fight you're pretty sure you're going to lose. Try to work together with your allies to improve your odds. Attack guys you see that are already engaged in fights. Retreat and heal if you're getting too beat up. Heal allies when the opportunity arises. Whatever you can do to maximize your odds of living while also maximizing the odds the enemy doesn't is what you gotta be doing. My last tip is that when fighting another lance, try to pay close attention to what their build is. It's difficult at first while you're still learning all the knights and weapons, but being able to identify what your opponent is using can have a big impact on how you fight them. Sometimes staying out of your opponent's optimal range is more important than staying within your own. When facing explosive users, for instance, it can be helpful to get as close as possible to force them to get hit by their own splash damage. Seeing that the enemy is using a larger or smaller weight class may influence how close you need to be for your weapon's spread to remain effective. Losing your shield to a lance that's running only anti-energy weapons isn't that big of a deal, but losing your shield to an enemy packing tons of anti-armor is a far more urgent affair. Knowing your enemy is key to success. Naturally, there's tons of other stuff to still learn about this game, but this video is already way longer than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to have to stop here. When in doubt, never feel afraid to just ask questions. The community is generally friendly and happy to help. I hope this video has been informative for you and helps you hit the ground running. I've been Frenox, and I'll see you on the battlefield.